highly trained in the use of weapons, being used before, obviously, and going to be used in the future, and I didn't know if they were going to be used right at that moment. But they handed me their weapon, and I took a look at the weapon and prayed about it for a moment, and I handed the weapon back to Assassin. Assassin looked at me shocked. Assassin assumed that I was the enemy, that's what he's been told, and that I was going to shoot him. And when he told me that, I said, well, Assassin, now you know I'm not one of them. I'm not from the other side. I'm not what they said that I am. And I explained, our side in the kingdom of God and of living for Christ and who He really is, and shared with them that would be in no way our design. We are instead sharing a message that can bring them out of this programmed darkness, this Luciferian agenda. Assassin said that, listen, if I got shot by you, they told me that I wouldn't die, that it wouldn't hurt, that eventually, and we talked a lot about this for a while. And I don't know if I've ever talked to Assassin since, but I do know this, that in many other programmed cult multiples, there are assassins on the inside. Standing in a federal officer's house years ago in the Cleveland area, the wife of this federal officer was a programmed cult multiple, and also had ties with Germany and the Black Flame, and a picture of an SS soldier by the name of Otto Kreitz. Standing in that house, we were discussing. People were carrying weapons. A coven group was trying to get this woman to be triggered to come out of the house and back to the coven. There was a setup going on. And in that house, where that federal officer was and others were, this woman said that she needed to talk to me, to step into the other room. So I stepped into the other room, and as we stood there, I knew enough about this woman that there were highly cult-loyal personalities on the inside. My arms were crossed over my chest as I was talking to her. She must have weighed 105 pounds. She switched to another personality named Iris. Iris looked at me and said, "What's the matter? Are you afraid of a little 100-pound woman?" And I just listened to her as she asked me again and again to take my arms down from crossing my chest and put them by my side. And prior to doing that, and in just a split moment, the Spirit of God who dwells within me, in my relationship to Jesus Christ, the Spirit of the living God said to me, "She's going to stab you." It was like a flash into my spirit. And just as I put my arms down, sure enough, in that split moment, she had a black sash around her waist, and she had her arms crossed, and she pulled out what looked like a thick 8-inch, or I don't know how long the needle was, and she attempted to stab me in my solar plexus area. And I had backed up enough away, grabbed her shoulders, and literally thrust her back onto a couch. The needle had dropped. She had grabbed it. It broke. A struggle ensued. The federal officer, the husband, came in. Others, she battled with them, ran to the kitchen where she tried to dispose of the rest of the needle. And as we got a hold of her, an entire deliverance encounter occurred at that moment. And after we talked, and after it was all over, and after all the issues, I discussed with Iris at this time, who never did turn to Christ, who never did. They're still out there. And I asked her about it back then in those days when I only had a glimpse of the idea of inside subpersonalities being trained, being given assignments. Well, Iris was given the assignment by a coven group to poison me, to stab me, and to poison me with something, and to do harm to me. And there was a level of programming plus demonic empowerment behind the subpersonality Iris. Subpersonalities are, many of them can be co-conscious, looking through the individual that seems so meek and mild and seems so passive. But in a split second, everything can change. Like one day in my office. Sitting in my office years ago, a military man brought his wife in, a sergeant, brought his wife in for counseling. We had counseled already, and we were dealing with the issue of subpersonalities and programming and what she was all about. She was probably one of the most lethal individuals I really come to know concerning deception, seduction. She's sitting on the other side of the desk where I was. The husband was right outside the doorway in the hallway. Secretary was right outside the doorway. I was writing some notes as she was talking to me, sitting straight across from me. I, for a moment, looked down on my paper to write a few notes, and the next thing I know, brushing past the tip of my head, I could feel the wind as her arm came down with a military bayonet just missing the crown of my head and going into the desk and sticking into the desk. I looked up, her eyes were glazed over, black as coal, and they were attempting to pull the knife out, and when they did, they tried a second time to reach me, and it thrust itself into the desk. I yelled for the secretary to call law enforcement. I came out from around the desk to deal with this and to stop this. At that moment, the sergeant, the husband, opened the door of the office and asked and yelled out, "What's going on?" This person looked at him, whoever it was, and literally growled and ran for the door. He was so scared, he slammed the door shut, and this person put the bayonet all the way through the door, inches from his face. By that time, I went after the person. He came back in. Law enforcement was showing up, and this person was carted off to a psych ward to be evaluated. Now listen, that occurred in just a split second. The ability, and listen, you Luciferians know how it works, but some of you are so intact, all you know is there's voices on the inside. There's missing time. That you realize that there's abilities within you that you've never trained. You never did these, you never learned these things on your own, but there's inside abilities. And those are part of the sub-personalities within you, because they created these sub-personalities. They programmed them through training, through numerous different ways, each one having their part. A priestess, a runner, a sex slave, someone who can conjure spirits, someone who can do the ritual stuff, someone who knows how to cut, someone who's like a nurse, someone who's they can do information technologies, someone who's an informer. But also inside, there are those that know how to fight, those who know how to, they are the super soldiers that come from the military side. You see, our military bought into the lie of the German scientists, the Nazis, and the occultism that came in the 50s, late 40s and 50s. The old Marionite programming and the Hall of the Dead, Black Flame, occultism from Germany flooded into our military systems. And without the aid of the Spirit of God and the presence of the living God in the lives of individual leaders, it was very easy for the superior supernatural power of darkness that was in many of these scientists and in the agenda to pull the wool over the eyes of the OSS, which became the CIA, which came out with the projects like Monarch and MK Ultra and Phoenix and others, to create super soldiers. The Manchurian Candidate by John Marks. Journey into Madness, the book Journey to Madness deals with this. CIA Doctors deals with this. Project Bluebird and the purposeful creation of multiple personality disorder. Listen, I'm not worried about the skeptics any longer because they can't help anybody. I'm talking to those who are Luciferians that know somewhat about this agenda. Now, I know a lot of Christians will listen to this too. And you understand part of this. You're connecting all the dots, and you understand the agenda and what's coming down and what's around us. You know what our job is, watchmen on the wall, witnesses of Christ until the very end. So stand strong, my friend. This is not a time to build castles. This is a time for great ministry, to offer an eternal hope, and to speak of an unshakable kingdom that is coming in the King of Heaven, who once walked dusty trails up to the cross. You know, the old rugged cross. Death, resurrection, ascension, prophesied by the prophets, and acknowledged by the angels of God, known by the demons as they screamed out in fear of Messiah. And that's why inside some of you chosen ones and Luciferians, you hate when I mention the blood of Christ, of the cross of Christ and who He is, or at least down deep within you, you know, different than the personalities are those dark spirits and the presence of those that keep you in bondage. There is only one way out of this. In so many of you chosen ones, there is not just personalities that were created through the pain and little ones that were hurting and went through trauma and sexual abuse and ritual abuse. There are highly trained, committed warriors on the satanic side. Those of you who know the ancient languages, those of you who can speak in multiple languages, those of you who are, even though it's separate information in each of the personalities on the inside, the information is there.